There is a person you probably know well. They wake up every morning and handle what needs to be handled. They absorb pressure quietly. They show up for others even when no one is showing up for them. They have been through things, real things, heavy things, and when someone asks how they are doing, they pause for just a fraction of a second too long before answering. "I'm fine." That person might be sitting with you right now. That person might be you. And here is the thing nobody has said to you clearly enough, loudly enough, or recently enough. What you have carried, and are still carrying, is more than most people will ever understand. Not because your pain is a competition, not because suffering requires a medal, but because there is a specific kind of person who moves through extraordinary difficulty so quietly, so consistently, that the world never notices, and eventually, they stop noticing too. This video is for that person, and it begins with a question that may be more uncomfortable than it first appears. When did you stop counting what you have survived? The survival blind spot human beings are wired with a remarkable and deeply problematic capacity, the ability to normalize almost anything they have lived through long enough. Psychologists call it adaptation, the brain's mechanism for reclassifying what was once overwhelming as simply ordinary. It is an evolutionary gift. Without it, every past wound would remain as raw as the day it was opened. We would be unable to function, unable to move. But adaptation comes with a cost that almost nobody talks about. When you normalize hardship, you also lose the ability to accurately measure it. The difficult thing you survived last year, the loss, the betrayal, the collapse. The period where you barely held yourself together gets quietly filed under just life. It gets reclassified as background, as unremarkable, as something that anyone would have handled if they had been in your position, except they wouldn't have. And deep down, some part of you already knows that. The survival blind spot is not a sign of weakness. It is actually evidence of strength that has been operating for so long it no longer recognizes itself. You have been resilient for so many consecutive seasons that resilience has stopped feeling like an achievement and started feeling like a personality trait. It is not a personality trait. It is a track record. What survival actually means before we examine the signs, we need to dismantle a dangerous misconception about what survival actually is. Most people unconsciously reserve the word survivor for extreme, visible, dramatic circumstances. War, disaster, life-threatening illness, catastrophic loss. And while those experiences absolutely qualify, they represent only one narrow corridor of a much larger truth. Survival also looks like this. It looks like getting out of bed for 300 consecutive mornings when depression made each one feel like climbing a mountain. It looks like rebuilding your identity after a relationship dismantled everything you thought you knew about yourself. It looks like raising children alone, or grieving silently because you decided the people around you had enough of their own pain to carry. It looks like functioning professionally while your interior world was quietly fracturing. It looks like smiling at the right moments, delivering on your responsibilities, and then sitting alone at night with a weight so familiar you have almost stopped noticing it is there. That is survival, quiet, undramatic, unwitnessed survival, and it counts. Every single day of it counts. Sign 1, you downplay your pain without realizing it. The first sign is one that will feel uncomfortably familiar the moment it is named. When someone asks what you have been through, you edit. Not intentionally, not dishonestly, but automatically. You compress the hard parts, you skip the worst nights. You describe your most difficult chapters in the flattest, most efficient language available, as though filing a report rather than telling a story. It was a tough time, but I got through it. A lot happened, but I'm okay now. It wasn't that bad, honestly. Other people have it worse. That last sentence is the most telling of all. The reflexive comparison, the instinct to immediately locate someone whose pain qualifies more than yours, is not humility. It is a survival mechanism that has outlived its usefulness. It was built to help you keep moving when acknowledgement felt like a luxury you couldn't afford. But you can afford it now. And the first step toward genuine healing is learning to describe what happened to you without immediately minimizing it. Your pain was real. The difficulty was real. The nights were as long as they felt. Sign 2, you function under pressure that would paralyze others. There is a specific look that crosses people's faces. when they learn what someone has been managing beneath the surface of an apparently composed life. It is a look of quiet disbelief, because from the outside you seemed fine. You were meeting deadlines, maintaining relationships, handling logistics, showing up. And you were doing all of that while simultaneously navigating an internal weight that most people, if they experienced it suddenly and without preparation, would find completely incapacitating. You did not find it incapacitating. You found it Tuesday. That is not normal. That is not what everyone does. That is a specific, developed, hard-won capacity that was built through repeated exposure to difficulty, and it deserves to be recognized for exactly what it is. Sign 3. You have rebuilt yourself after losing who you were. Perhaps the most profound form of survival is the one that receives the least recognition, the rebuilding of identity after it has been fundamentally disrupted. Some experiences do not merely hurt you. They dismantle the version of you that existed before them, a grief that reorders your entire understanding of the world, a betrayal that makes you question your own judgment, a failure so significant that the future you had been building collapses entirely, and you are left standing in the debris of a life that no longer resembles the one you planned. And yet you built again, not the same structure, not the same blueprint, something new, something different, something forged from materials the old version of you did not yet possess. That reconstruction, quiet, unglamorous, and largely invisible to everyone around you, is one of the most extraordinary things a human being can do. The 3 signs explored in this first part share a common thread. They are forms of strength so deeply embedded in your daily functioning that they have become invisible. But invisible does not mean absent. It means unacknowledged. And that is precisely what part 2 is going to change. That might seem like a small thing. It is not. Because if this video has found you, if these words are landing somewhere specific and recognizable inside you, then there is a very good chance you are exactly the kind of person who rarely stops long enough to be witnessed, who keeps scrolling past their own pain, who reads something true about themselves and thinks, interesting, then immediately returns to managing everyone else's world. Not today. Today, we finish what we started. 4 remaining signs, and a truth at the end of them that you have been waiting longer than you probably realized to finally hear. Sign 4, you feel deeply, but rarely let others see it. There is a particular kind of emotional life that exists entirely below the surface. You experience things profoundly. Music moves you in ways you would never describe out loud. Certain memories arrive without warning and carry a weight that takes hours to settle. You notice small things, the way someone's voice changes when they are trying not to cry, the particular silence that follows a difficult conversation, the precise moment a room shifts emotionally. You feel all of it constantly, quietly, alone. But somewhere along the way, through experience, through loss, through learning the hard way what happens when you let people see the full depth of what you carry, you built a wall. Not out of coldness, out of wisdom earned through wounds. You stopped showing the interior because the interior had been handled carelessly before. Because vulnerability had been used against you, or dismissed, or met with a discomfort that made you feel like a burden rather than a human being with legitimate needs. So you learned to carry it privately. And here is what that actually means. You have been doing the emotional labor of processing profound feeling entirely alone, for an extended period of time, without recognition, without support, and without complaint. That is not emotional unavailability. That is emotional endurance of the highest order. Sign 5. You are unusually attuned to the pain of others. People who have survived significant pain develop something that cannot be taught in any classroom, purchased with any resource, or manufactured through any technique. They develop accurate empathy, not the performative kind, the social script of saying the right words at the right moments, but the real kind. The kind where you can sit with someone in their worst moment and not flinch, not rush them toward resolution, not fill the silence with noise because their pain makes you uncomfortable. You know how to do that because someone should have done it for you, and often, no one did. Your sensitivity to others is not a personality trait you were simply born with. It is a map drawn from your own interior territory. Every time you instinctively know what someone needs in a moment of pain, You are drawing on a landscape that was built through your own experience of navigating that same darkness. Your empathy is not separate from your survival. It is your survival translated into a gift for other people. Sign 6. You carry a fear of things being too good. This sign is the one people recognize last and feel most ashamed of when they do. Everything is going well. Better than it has in a long time, maybe. And instead of settling into that, instead of exhaling and allowing the goodness to simply be good, you wait. You scan the horizon for the thing that is coming to take it away. You hold happiness at a slight distance, not because you don't want it, but because you have learned, through repeated, specific personal experience, that stability is temporary. That when things feel safe, the fall is usually closer than it appears. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, a nervous system permanently calibrated for threat because threat was once a reliable feature of your environment. Your brain learned to treat peace as a warning sign rather than a destination. This is not pessimism. This is not ingratitude. This is a survival mechanism that was built in a specific season of your life, for a specific reason, and has simply not yet received the signal that the danger has passed. The fear of good things is not a character flaw. It is a scar from a chapter that ended, even if your nervous system has not yet read the final page. Sign 7. You have kept going on days when stopping felt easier. This is the sign that matters most. The one that sits beneath every other sign on this list like a foundation. No one can see, but everything rests upon. There were days, specific, real, particular days, when the wait was so complete, so total, so without apparent exit, that continuing felt genuinely optional. When the effort required to simply exist for one more hour felt disproportionate to any reward the future seemed likely to offer. And you kept going anyway, not because it was easy. Not because you had clarity about what was waiting on the other side. Not because someone handed you a reason that was convincing enough to carry you through. You kept going because something in you, ancient, quiet, and absolutely unbreakable, refused to stop. That thing has no name in any language that does it justice. But it is the most significant thing about you. More significant than your achievements, your relationships, your talents, or any external measure the world has ever used to assess your worth. You have kept going, on the days it cost you everything to do so. That is survival in its purest, most irreducible form. What the science confirms, and what it means for you post-traumatic growth research, pioneered by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, documents something that challenges everything. Our culture assumes about hardship. People who move consciously through significant adversity, who name it, examine it, and integrate it rather than simply outrunning it, consistently demonstrate measurable growth in 5 specific areas: personal strength, new possibilities relating to others, appreciation for life, and spiritual or existential depth. The critical word is consciously. The growth does not come from surviving alone. It comes from recognizing that you survived, from giving your experience the dignity of acknowledgement. From stopping long enough to say, not for anyone else but for yourself, this was hard, I carried it, and I am still here. That act of recognition is not self-pity. It is not weakness. It is neurologically, psychologically, and humanly necessary. Your brain needs a narrative. It needs to know that the difficult chapter had a shape, a beginning, a weight, and an end. Without that closure, the nervous system remains in the chapter indefinitely, still bracing for impact that already happened. Naming your survival is how you tell your body, we made it through that. We are not still inside it. The truth this entire video has been building toward: you have not just survived the obvious things. You have survived the quiet erosions, the slow losses. The versions of yourself you had to grieve in private. The moments when no one was watching and you chose, without applause or witness or reward, to continue. That is a life of extraordinary endurance dressed in ordinary clothing. And the most important reframe this video can offer you is this: survival was never supposed to be the destination. It was the passage, the proving ground, the place you moved through, not the place you were meant to stay. What comes after survival is not more surviving. What comes after survival is living, with the full knowledge of what you are capable of, the full depth of what you have earned, and the full permission to finally, genuinely, without apology, be okay. You have already done the hardest part. A question for you before this video ends. I want to leave you with something more than information. Think of the hardest season of your life, the one you moved through so quietly that the world never fully knew the weight of it. Now ask yourself honestly, have you ever stopped even once to acknowledge yourself for surviving it? Not to anyone else, just to yourself in private, with the same compassion you would offer without hesitation to someone you love. If the answer is no, that is where healing begins. Not in a therapist's office, not in a conversation, not in a grand gesture of self-discovery. It begins in a single, private, honest moment where you look at everything you have carried and say, "That was real, that was hard. And I am still here." Leave a comment below with one word that describes what you have survived. Just one word. You do not owe anyone the full story, but you do owe yourself the acknowledgement.